You're now listening to Vices and Vultures, a podcast on cultures. Welcome back to the Unpacked segment of Vices and Vultures, where we share from our collection of solo interviews done by the co-hosts. What's going on, everybody? This is A2. Fun fact about me, I've kept poetry very close to my artistic output for well over a decade. Throughout college, I made a lot of artistic connections, one of which is who I'd like to call a modern-day poet. There isn't really much more to be said about this man, so sit back and enjoy a conversation with both myself and Nomancer.
Hey guys, my name is Livni Zabaruz Aguilar. I'm a 23-year-old from Minneapolis, Minnesota, currently. I am many things. I'm a believer, I'm a dreamer, I'm a writer, I'm a lover, I'm a pacifist, I'm trying to be a vegetarian, I believe in an all-powerful and loving God. I love human beings, and I'm out here figuring things out just like you guys. That's me. Growing up, it was all about R&B and hip-hop, so I grew up in South Florida, Miami, Florida, 305, and the thing is, to be black and to be cool, you had to be about hip-hop. But when I went abroad and I came back and in the traveling that I've done, I realized that I could like many things and I don't have to fit the box. You know, every time I'm walking around, whether it's work or just for fun, like every time I go some places, people look at me and I'm not saying like, oh, like I'm not being paranoid, but it's kind of like I've gotten a lot of comments like, wow, like, because I look weird. You know?
Describe, okay, for the people who are just listening, describe your aesthetic, your everyday aesthetic.
Well, I'm gonna start off with this. My aesthetic is heavily influenced by grunge. I'm a huge Mother Love Bone fan. If anybody knows who that is, which I doubt. But like Pearl Jam, Nirvana, like I'm a big fan of the Seattle sound in the 90s. I'm a huge fan of the 90s period. I'm a huge fan of the style of dress that you would see in TV shows like Fresh Prince, TV shows like Boy Meets World. I'm very into this aesthetic of faded out clothing, large trench coats. I got piercings, I got long hair, but I love trap music, and I love classic rock, you know, and I'm Latino too, so I love my reggaeton and I love my salsa. So it's kind of like I've been delving into these new worlds where I'm like, I can like many things. I don't have to be the one thing that my skin color or my look or my hair or my ethnicity places me in. I can be in many things. I can vibe to Mr. Big. I can vibe to, you know, Guns N' Roses. And I can also vibe to Miguel and Anderson .Paak. I could be many things, and so I think I started wearing rings a while back, and now that's one of the biggest things that is noticeable from me is you see my hands and they're full of rings typically. I got one in every finger usually when I go to work, which is a little extra, I think, but I'm a little extra myself, so.
I feel that. So, I mean, just in general, knowing you and like your background, you're very eclectic, so even though you have this grunge influence, and I'm glad that you told me because I've never actually asked you this question because for those who are listening, we went to college together and I never asked you this question, but like knowing you, even with this, you do have just many influences in general. So tell me more about how not necessarily like your clothing aesthetic, but your ethnicity plays into it. Like, you know, you said you're Latino, so like what Latino, and just like kind of dig more into that, because I think that obviously all of this that you've been talking about goes into the poetry.
Yes, it really does actually. Well, my mother is Colombian, so that's the Latino part, and so I'm Latino Caribbean. So my mother's Colombian, and my father, he's from Haiti. So that being said, I am a Latino Caribbean American, and I see myself above all things because the most influential part of my culture would be being an American. I'm a very proud American. I mean, right here, that's my flag right there.
Right.
You know, I love this country very much, and it grew on me, like, slowly, you know, because growing up, you trying to really find out who you are, and so you see yourself as strictly one thing or another, you know. Over the years, I've been coming to terms with the many things I am, and I'm very proud to be a black man. I'm very proud to be an American man. I'm very proud to be an Hispanic, Latino, you know, Latin American man, and so that definitely influences a lot of the things that I do and that I write about, because I think many times in Spanish, you know, but with an American influence. The way I speak Spanish is even very Americanized, because I learned it here at home, you know, from a Latin woman, and so
right.
Yeah.
What do you feel that, even though I read your poetry and it's in English, I don't know, do you write anything in Spanish? Yes or no?
I do, and I'm very careful because, you know, English comes naturally to me. I mean, I've been born and raised in this country, but I do write a lot in Spanish as well for the audience that is Latino. I have a lot of friends who are straight from South America, like they came here, they're transplants, you know, fresh off the boat, like we like to say. And so I do write to cater to an audience that is only Spanish speaking, so they can understand kind of my world in their language and my language too. So I write in Spanish a lot, especially when I'm really feeling a Latina woman. So
right.
like I've been when I'm dating Latin women, I'm typically very, very inspired to write in Spanish more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting. I feel like you're pulling from both worlds. English comes naturally to you, but there's only certain things, like, you know, language, even though there are translations, it doesn't have the same implication from person, or not person, language to language. So I feel that to that end, sometimes it's just almost even unfair to kind of like put English versus Spanish. It's like English and Spanish. Like, you're not Haitian versus Colombian. You're Haitian and Colombian and American, and you speak English and you speak Spanish and you speak French.
Yeah.
So it's just like everything like has its own place. Do you write in French too, or no?
I don't write in French. I can't write in French, but it wouldn't be very poetic because I can't master the poetry in that language.
I think that's the next step, bro. I think just off the cuff, I think that like that's Spanish. I already hear like and see as something that I would like to learn, just from the simple fact that like there's some things that I can't say in English, because I have this thing, you know, being born and raised as an American as well, but having a multi-ethnic background like yourself. I don't know, like I feel like there's a lot of restrictions as to like what I can say. I mean, like, yeah, like I got an education and stuff like that, so I understand how to like say big words and things like that, but I feel like there's some things that like get lost in meaning and stuff like that. So I want to go back to, and I'm just so happy that like this is just, I'm just so happy that we had talked about this. But going back to the Divine Feminine, the Cinderella song, there's the guitar. There's a guitar in the beginning, and there's like a solo at the end, and then there's a piano part. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So
that's actually one of my favorite parts.
Right. Yeah. So like my whole thing was, yeah, there's just a lot of intensity and emotion building up, and then there's this piano thing. And I think I'm not even going to ask this. I'm just going to say it. I think that song wouldn't be what it is without that particular part, because I feel like sonically you can hear from start to finish the range of emotions that you were talking about in the beginning, as far as just the encounter, you know, the intensity, the you know, honestly, the dichotomy of, you know, I'm mortal, but in a sense, like, this takes me to paradise, and all the, you know, all the things and sayings that you can do. So I think that's beautiful, because what you talk about is what so many people talk about, but I feel like so few people have an understanding for like what it really is. Because I think, what did you say in the beginning? You said that like that men appreciate women, but not in the sense that, you remember what you were saying? Yeah.
I can't tell you verbatim what I said, but I can tell you that, like, us men, we have this appreciation for women that, because of our fallen nature, isn't very contained. This is why you see so many atrocities going on. This is why you see so much adoration. It's like we live in a world where there's this enigma of we love women so much, yet we treat them so badly. And you notice it. You notice it just yesterday. You know, I was with somebody and they were telling me these things, and it hurt me, because I desire peace and eternity. And that desire, and that part of me that desires, you know, God, and desires eternity and desires purity, hears these horrible things, and it's shocking, but then somewhere inside of me understands why it happens. And it understands why it happens because it is this kind of like this obsession, this adoration, this maybe some will call it even love for something beautiful, but we don't know how to contain it because it's so tainted by our fallen state. When I say fallen state, I'm talking about sin. I'm talking about, I like to call sin a virus. And so that virus taints all aspects of our being, character, and emotion. So if you love something, the only way you can love it purely is by understanding and being with purity, which is, I'm talking about Yahweh, God. So do you know what I'm saying? Like, we love women so much, and we write songs about it and poetry and all these things, but then we look at the dark side and we're like, dang, like, we're really doing this to our women, to our daughters, to our sisters, to our mothers. This is how we talk about them. This is how we treat them. You know, our co-workers, our nurses, our doctors. So I've been writing lately. I've been actually writing a lot of these love poems and romantic things with this new thing. Not new. It's actually not new, but it's blowing up now, where people are speaking out. Women are speaking out. Men are speaking out about the mistreatment of the fairer gender. And I think it's as a writer who loves romance and poetry and loves women, you can't deny that. I actually feel guilty sometimes because I wrote a poem just recently I write about all this love, but it's funny because a lot of us just don't understand how to properly love her. So, like, what's going on here? And so you see this everywhere. I mean, you see this where, like, this song of Cinderella, like, it's passionate, it's beautiful, it's sexy, it's sensual. But then on the other side, this same genre has a lot of songs that is demeaning and degrading to the very women that we adore. So,
yeah, you just unpacked a lot. So do you think that the only way we can, just to go back so I feel like I understand this better, do you feel that the only way we can understand something and some, like, a subject such as women, is to go about it in such a way where you only see it for the purity that it is and ignore the bad?
No. Actually, that's not at all what I mean. What I'm saying is the only way we can truly love our women, love ourselves, love humanity, is by having a relationship with the author of love. No matter how much I want to, whether it's love or do good or whatever it is, you know, you can't do good apart from the creator of good, the essence of goodness. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes no sense. Right. Because the only goodness that you and I know without the creator, the only essence, the only meaning that we have of love is one that's tainted by our own desires.
Right.
So we would be complete hedonists, pleasure-seeking monsters, if for lack of better words, because we're driven by our own impulses, and our impulses and desires and emotions, they're tainted by the virus called sin. So what I'm trying to say is the only way you can truly love anyone, the only way that you can truly appreciate someone for being the worthy, valuable human being that they are, is by seeing it through the lens of the creator. or else everything that I write about, everything that I do, I'm doing it out of lust. I'm doing it out of pleasure. I'm doing it, and it is true. A lot of what I write is because I'm literally sitting down at a coffee shop and this girl sits right next to me. We strike up a conversation, and the sound of her voice is so arousing. It's so beautiful. It's so angelic. And so I just write like three poems just based out of an encounter that was like 20 minutes long, you know. And I'm discovering that this side of me, there's a lot of darkness inside of me, and there's a lot of light that I seek that can only come not from within but from the Creator. And so this happens a lot with my writing. It's I tackle these things. I tackle these things within the human condition, you know.
Right, definitely. So is a lot of your writing like this where it's reactive to stimuli, or is that a large percentage of it, or do you spend a large percentage of the time thinking about something or like premeditating a subject and then acting on it?
That's actually a good question, because I would say 80 to 90% of my writing comes from some sort of stimulation. You know, whether my heart is being stimulated or my mind is going through some real sensual stimuli that just occurred like 5 minutes ago when a girl like accidentally touched my arm, or when I'm on a date, or when I'm thinking about the best kiss I ever had when I was like 19. It's always, something's always stimulating my artistic process.
Right.
You know, and so I think about it. So it always starts with some sort of stimulation. I can literally, I find inspiration in almost everything. So I literally, I'm driving, and I do a lot of my writing in the car, actually. I'm driving to work, and I see the people who are driving past me. And I think about, I don't know them, but I think about who they are and how they are. And I think for the brief little window that I have of looking at them, whether they're singing, whether they're stressed, whether they're smokers, whether they're, you know, angry or happy, I create my own world, my own, you know, my own perspective of who they are. And then I even like romanticize, you know, whatever they could be, and I write about it.
Definitely. So going back to the previous point that you were making about how the only way you can experience love is through the author itself, for people who might not necessarily see eye to eye with that, or are wondering, well, how do I go about that in a practical way? What would be the first thing that you would tell somebody to that end?
Well, I'll just say this for real. Like, there's a lot of non-believers. You know, there's people who just don't believe.
Right.
There's no such thing as an author of love. There's a lot of people that think that there's no God, and that's fine. You know, I respect you guys. But the fact of the matter is there's a God who created this thing we call love, this thing that we all desire. And I could tell you that if you look at human history, whether you want to do it mathematically, scientifically, spiritually, I'll tell you that love does not come from human essence at all. And if you want to do it practically, I think it's the easiest way to practically start getting acquainted with what love is understanding how dark you can be. Understanding how sinister you yourself are, and then understanding where does this desire for love come from.
Right.
And that's a very fun but scary process and thing to do, because then you start sitting down and realizing that, dang, like, I'm kind of twisted. Like, dang, like, you know, there's no good in me. Right. And so practically, like you said, how can you do it in a practical way? I personally, you know, I'm not going to start preaching here. But I honestly think it's walking with the Creator. You know, do good, go into nature, and and try at least. If you're a skeptic, try at least to have a relationship with the Creator.
Right. And I'm so glad that you took that angle, because I do believe as well that it's personalized. It's very personalized. It's something that you have to ask yourself when you said, going back to the questions of like, this is who I am, or this is what I'm capable of doing. It's something that Libney has to answer for himself. AJ has to answer for himself. You know what I'm saying? James and Julie, they have to answer for themselves. Like, and that's why I'm glad you took that angle, because that's kind of the one size fits all answer, but at the same time, it's very personalized. So you can't really say one size fits all. It's just, one size fits one. So I like that a lot. Real quick, off the cuff, do you have anything memorized as far as your writings go that you can kind of share as an example?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I just posted something 40 minutes ago.
True.
Yeah, I just posted something 40 minutes ago. Let me get it. I'm writing a lot of things right now. I don't want to write I have an arbitrary way of posting my things and deciding what I'm gonna post. But I'm not gonna mention anything that hasn't been posted yet. But I will actually, I'm gonna read you something that I just wrote that actually really. I wrote this 2 days ago at the hospital. It was like 4 a.m. I was working at the ER, and I wrote this because one of the gentlemen that walked into the ER was crazy drunk, and he started talking foolishness, and you could hear him all in the ER department, in triages, which we say. And this is how it goes. My father has always had two options for dealing with the pain: God or liquor. He chose God, but always sounds like a drunk. Nomancer.
That's the alias, by the way, for those who are listening. Nomancer.
Yeah, that's the alias. I go by the name of Nomancer. Nomancer.
And where does that come from? What's the inspiration behind this alias?
So the inspiration behind the name, actually, it's funny because I don't tell people this.
You don't have to if you don't want to, but
I will gladly, because I like to get personal. I mean, as you can tell, my writing is it's oftentimes very borderline erotic, but also very real. Like it's about me and how I see the world.
Right.
Nomancer comes from two words, actually. Nomadic romancer.
Mm.
And so I don't consider myself to have a home.
Ooh, yo. Ooh, I love that.
I've always been Roman. I'm a missionary. I've been a missionary for almost all of my life, and I've been to many countries, and so I've always felt like I don't have a home, and I've been always like a nomad, like a gypsy, like a wanderer, So that's nomadic, and then romancer is because the closest thing to a home that I find is in love. Is in love of a woman, to be honest with you. I know that love of God is the most important thing, but for me, romance is one of the most important things in my life. I'm driven heavily by romance. So nomadic romancer means it's a wandering romancer trying to find home.
And where's home right now?
Right now, and I think for a good chunk of my life, it's gonna be Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And how much has Minneapolis influenced your style? Because you've been going hard at this for a couple years now, and I think that was about the same time that you took a break from like school, and when we stopped going to school together, things like that. And I'm just curious because the Midwest, I feel it gets overlooked in a lot of areas, especially artistically. We always look at the coast, always Cali, always New York, always Seattle, always Florida. But there's places. I'm having spent 6 years living in Lincoln, Nebraska. There's a whole music scene out there that's very local, but it's very real. And Minnesota, when people think of Minnesota, one of the first things that comes to mind is obviously Prince, especially I believe it's Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And then, it's coincidentally the Vikings, the NFL team, they are, what would you call it? Their primary color is purple. So, there is that. But at the same time, I feel like, not a lot of people can really, there's not a lot of hometown heroes. There's artists, and creatives like you and I who, depending on who you are, you might put on for the hometown. When Bryson Tiller first came out, he had a song called 502 Come Up. The area code becomes very important. You shouted out 305 earlier, but some people don't do that. Anyways, so I'm just curious, like, what is it? What's the energy there? Not so much for you, nomancer, but the general energy there as far as creativity goes that you feel that people need to know about.
Well, this is the funny thing. Above all, Prince, he hails from, Minneapolis, Minnesota, but we in the Twin Cities, and so the twin of Minneapolis is St. Paul. And one of the greatest authors of all time comes from St. Paul, Minnesota. His name is F. Scott Fitzgerald, author of The Great Gatsby, A Tender Night. So we have a lot of unsung, a lot of unsung authors and writers and musicians that come here. But I think the energy here is heavily influenced by, and this is funny because this is what's appealing to me. It's heavily influenced by the cold. And let me tell you why. Like, we know that the East Coast, I lived in New York and Long Island when I was young too, in Chicago also. And I've lived in cold places. But, this is the thing about the cold. Wherever the cold is present, there is a culture, whether it's hip-hop, rock and roll, writing, rap, whatever it is, there's always a culture that is created by the climate of the region. I mean, I'll give you an example. The skating culture from California, the surfing culture from Hawaii. I mean, this developed as a result of the climate. And so here in Minnesota, let me tell you about that. I mean, we think about hip-hop in New York where it all started. I mean, in Minnesota, everything is very cold most of the time. And I have found that because it's so cold, a lot of times we want to put our strife away. We want to put our quarrels away. We want to put our beef away because it's so cold. Like, I don't want to waste energy on this beef and this drama because it's so cold. So let's just all come inside and let's drink together hot cocoa. Let's drink some coffee together. Let's stay warm together. When it's summer, we can pick that back up. But you notice that in Minnesota and in many places that are very cold, once it starts getting cold, people are a little bit more friendly, and a lot of people attribute that to Christmas and to the giving. But it's actually because of the winter. It's because of the cold. It's because your hands are freezing. You ain't about to square up.
Right.
You're cold inside and out. You're cold inside and out. You don't want to expend energy in fighting when you really want to stay warm. So you go inside, and then with your very enemy, you guys are pouring each other coffee and chocolate. You guys are talking about life, politics, religion. So the vibe here, if we're talking artistically, is very special. Aside from this rant about climate, it's very special, and the reason it's very special, it's because the Twin Cities is not as big as New York or LA. So the competition isn't crazy, but it's big enough where there's attention given to you if you have something.
Right.
I have a friend that I met when I first moved here. She is actually an up and coming fashion designer, and she's gonna have a line. She already has a line. It's called Portia Celeste. Her name is Vanessa Lawson, and it's funny because she has no idea that I'm shouting her out. But this girl, she's really picking up steam. She has amazing clothes. There's a lot of people out here trying to rap, trying to do spoken words. A lot of people here. I'm trying to start a band myself. I play the guitar, kind of, and so I have a friend who literally went to school for music production, and he makes beats, and he's on SoundCloud, and he makes amazing music. So what I'm saying is, over here, you're not gonna be drowned out by all the competition. You have enough space to create and to grow and develop as an artist, painter, whatever you want to be. And then when you're good enough and you have enough following, which you can do in the Midwest, then you can go elsewhere and let that be marketable.
Right.
So
Right. And that formula is for everywhere. It's just that I'm glad that you were able to really just shine a light on this particular region because it's a lot more scalable than it is in a big city.
Yes.
And that's big because I felt the same way about my time in Lincoln. You know, as little as I knew then as I know now about how things work, and my workflow is drastically different than it was back then. I was of the understanding, and I still know this to be true, that, you know, there's not a lot to sink your teeth into. So, you know, you give somebody a little something and they'll take it. I remember my last year of living there, I did ride sharing, and I picked somebody up, and in like the next 10 seconds, they were just like, I recognize you from The Contrary, which is, for those who are listening, a project that I did during college, a piano based group that I did with a good friend of mine. And, you know, this was years removed from that. Like all the people that were involved with that had moved away. And, you know, I was transitioning into solo and et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, this person looked at me and was just like, you know, we're in the same city. And we're just like, I remember that. And it was just, you know, first things first, it was just like really cool to be able to have that be in somebody's memory for that long, to be able to be triggered. So that itself is cool, but it just also is a testament to the culture, because you wouldn't really get that, elicit that same response in a big state like New York, where I am, or Cali, or even like states like Texas or something like that. So it's just, I think that's really awesome. And as far as the climate goes, I think that's fascinating because there's an artist, you know, Black from Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah,
especially his new album.
Huge fan. He, first and foremost, I believe he's probably one of the most cohesive writers in terms of how he pieces together his records. The way that he's documented his life up until this point has been so fluid. And the reason why I'm bringing Black up is because he would always say this prior to the promo cycle of his second album that's out now. He would always say, I always write better when it's cold. I always write better when it's cold. I always write better when it's cold. And
okay.
Yeah, he would always put that on social media, and like that stuck with me because I felt the same way. Because I think we might have talked about this. I did a lot of poetry from, that was a decade ago, actually. It was a decade ago. I did it pretty strong. I held it pretty strong up until like right before graduation, when I was really trying to like do the whole lyricism thing as far as hip hop goes. And I took a step back from that because it's not time for that right now. I think piano is a lot more natural to me. But I related to that, like, in a lot of what you're saying in general. I relate to that because, yeah, I write better when it's cold. I write better, and I have a better output when I have a muse, when I'm able to react to a moment then and there. I have a couple books that are sitting around somewhere in the house that I will carry with me, and like anytime I have something, I write the date and I just go. Like, it's just, you know, it was just so free flowing. And, you know,
you just take off.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's the same way with the piano now. I speak with the piano, so like my ideas flow that way as well. But as far as a component for words, that's just what it is. And so I love what you're saying, because all of that is it's very, very true. It's true, because when you are forced, when things that are not in your control force you to be in a situation, you react differently.
Yes, you do.
And a lot of times you're better for it, but that's only if you allow that to happen. Sometimes people don't respond well. Like you have people like me, for instance, who is not a big fan of the summer, and I'll let everybody know that. And you know, Yeah, and it puts me in a position where it's just like I don't want to deal with this heat, and a lot of people don't want to deal with heat either. But at the same time, like you have people who don't like the cold. I love the cold because it really allows you to kind of just it gives you a reason to quote unquote hibernate. And we don't hibernate like bears do, but at the same time, we do have the tendency to kind of hide away for the winter. That was my winter. This past winter, that was like, if there was any time in my life that I hibernated the most, it was definitely this winter because of all the things that were going on. So much transition, as I was messaging you earlier, in just these 2 short years, but we're better for it. I think you're better for it too, in terms of you being in that area, you being able to develop this talent, and being able to just tell people, look, I'm a nomancer, and this is how I see the world. Welcome. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're out with people, be it women, be it friends, roommates, whatever it may be, this is me. You know what I'm saying? Like, no matter how different this aesthetic may be to you, it changes nothing. What's next? As far as you said you want to start a band. Obviously you're doubling down on the gifts that you have. What's next?
What's next? I'm gonna tell you what's next. I'm gonna sound mad corny though. So shout out to my family. I just want to say that I feel like I'm famous. Just kidding. Fame is not a goal for me. I want to shout out to this girl that I just recently been talking to, because let me tell you something. I'm a little scared because you telling me what's next. This is my automatic answer to that. I'm preparing myself to be a good husband. I'm preparing myself to be a good father. I'm preparing myself to be a better follower of Christ. I'm preparing myself to be a better brother. And the reason I'm saying this is because just today, actually, I'll tell you a story. Just today, I was in my car waiting for my appointment. I work as an interpreter for the healthcare system. And as I'm sitting there, I was thinking about, I just spent some time with this girl, and she completely made me want to be a better man in a way that I've never felt before. Like, I was so, I felt like I was being transformed while we were talking. And today I was thinking about her and everything that it was told. And when you said what's next, honestly, I want to become someone in life in a position where I can say that I am living comfortably, but not monetarily, comfortably, spiritually. I want to be somewhere in life where I can provide, maybe not answers, because I don't have them, but I want to be somebody that can provide asylum. I want to be somebody who can provide peace for people who are seeking it, spiritually especially. I want to be somebody who's a protector. I want to be somebody who is always loving selflessly. And I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be pretentious here. The reason I say this is because the woman just literally, in the most innocent way, made me want to be a better man.
Right. Like, the
look in her eyes, everything, it really made me want to be a better man. And I literally, it changed already the whole dynamic of the way I'm going to write. And so what's next? What's next is that I'm gonna try to see if I can capture her heart. That's what's next. She don't know this. She don't watch none of this. So
spoken like a true nomancer.
Yeah, that's what's next. She's next. She's next. That's what's next. She's in my plans.
All right, man. Well, we gon' That's heavy, bro. That's real heavy. Where do people find the poems?
Please, if you guys are interested, I'm honestly you know how you know how you be making makeshift items you know, because you don't want to go buy them at the store. So you make up your own invention to deal with everyday issues. Well, I consider myself like a makeshift writer, a poet. Is nothing like, I take it very seriously. But it's a very simple thing. You know, words. I love words, and so I put them down, and they sound good. And so you can find me on Instagram under the name Nomancer. You can find me on Facebook under the same name, Nomancer. And that's how I'm gonna start gathering a following, and then the plan is to write a book, and not make money out of it, but to leave my mark on this world.
Right.
It'll be by the way I love people, and by the way I wrote it down. So.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that the meta narrative that you provided in this conversation, and just being able to just talk to you about things that interest us and the way that we already think and how it's so similar because we're biracial, blah, 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 all this stuff. You know, it's just, I think people who appreciate your poetry will appreciate this a lot more. And I'm going to go on record and say this right now. I've known you for a few years, but in this past 2 hours, because we were texting before this, I feel like I understand you and I appreciate you so much better as not only a creative and colleague, but as a friend, as a brother. And, you know, yeah, absolutely. Because it's just amazing to me how sometimes you don't take the time to talk about the things that matter, but those are the things that make all the difference. And I feel like that's what you talked about here. You pour your heart out into all the words, and in hindsight, reading it didn't make any sense, but now it makes so much more sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, obviously, you know, my boy lived near the nomancers and love and all that other stuff, but you know, that's.
Let me tell you something. I write, and everybody asks me this, but let me tell you, a lot of my things sometimes, they do sound vague sometimes, and the reason is because, like, everything that I write, every single poem is actual letters, love letters to my future wife.
Right. You're documenting.
It's like, they're love letters documenting how I was before I met her and how I got there. So I feel you on that. You're right, though.
Yeah, it's just like, I'll go back to it, just like Black. He's been documenting his story of becoming a father, transitioning out of relationships, transitioning into becoming a household name in music. I feel the same way about the music that I write and the photos that I take, because I take a lot of content, and you know, this is just the gateway that marketing has provided for us. Over the past 2 years, and I keep referencing 2 years, and for people that are listening, it's because it's been over 2 years since I graduated college, and I've kind of been in like the same system over and over again. But ever since those 2 years, my life has become radically different just by the way I've been living. Traveled a lot in the beginning, and then been staying in a lot recently, and, you know, navigating life and adulting, as we say, all that other stuff. I look back on those photos of those 2 years, and those 2 years mean so much more than the years before that, only because, you know, I was able to kind of break out and see things a little bit differently, and I've documented it along the way. And the music that I'm putting out right now, in the same way that the poetry that you're putting right now, which is why I feel like, you know, we are sibling creatives in that regard. We're documenting for the future, you know, like I'm not going to go on record and talk about like a future wife per se, because I don't feel like that's necessarily my trajectory in terms of my artistry, even though love and themes like that are some things that do influence me. I think it's a lot deeper than that, and, you know, another conversation for another time. But I will say that I'm going to be able to look back and be able to accurately tell, and not even just tell the story, but just, you know, there are times where there are some stories that you don't tell. And actually, I thought about something here. Is there anything as somebody who's, you say you're vague at times, or people can perceive your writing to be as vague. You talk a lot about what your influences are, and it sounds like it's very ever present in your life. Is there an area, or are there areas in your life that you black out as far as your artistry? Like nobody has access to that, because you just talked about somebody that you're preparing yourself mentally for something. Is there areas of your life that, because I feel that I have those in for me, but I'm curious as for you, the nomancer, somebody who's wandering, somebody who's, you will probably tell bits and pieces of this story over the past hour plus to anybody that you talk to. Are there areas of your life that you kind of just be like, nobody gets access to that at all? And you don't have to like name it necessarily, but like, does that exist for you?
It definitely exists, and the way that I am able to share it without compromising whatever that is by my writing. So this is why sometimes it is considered vague, but sometimes it is very precise. A lot of the things that I write are written about me, for me, and it's how I see things. So like I put it out there to maybe like have people who can relate find some understanding, or to enjoy something beautiful. Like words are beautiful, but I don't put it out there for any. I want to make this clear. I don't put it out there because I write because I have to. I put it out there not even for an explanation. I put it out there as an observation. And there are aspects of what I observe that I hold very close and very concealed, because it's just not, it's not gonna help the writing. I want people to interpret how I'm feeling and make it their own. That's why movies are so special, and music is so special, because the artist, whether it's Black, whether it's, J. Cole, whether it's one of my favorite bands is Kings of Leon, whether it's one of your favorite bands, or the director and the actors, they're putting out these themes and they have a different meaning to it. And a lot of the times their motives and their meaning is concealed so that you can take it in and you can process it, and it can inspire you, and you can add your own meaning. You can make what it is. Like one of my favorite painters, his name is Jean Basquiat. We already know he's from New York.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, bro?
Represent. Now Basquiat is a powerful figure, because it's like you put out your art, and sometimes it's like, what's Banksy's amazing. You put out your art and it has meaning to you, but you don't gotta share that. You don't gotta share that meaning. Let the world process it, and let everyday people put their own spin on things, So I do conceal. There's a lot of things I conceal, especially how I feel about God. And I conceal it in a lot of my art, and I let it roll with it, I can be whatever I want to be. If I want to be, if I want to be plastic, I'll be plastic. If I want to be mysterious, I'll be mysterious. If I want to be a rebel without a cause, I'll be one. And if I want to be a faithful follower or servant, I'll be one. But when it comes to your self-expression in art, you get to decide what you want to be, and nobody can tell you what it is.
Nobody should tell you what it is, anyways, because I feel like a lot of times people are dictated by, oh well, this person told me the other day that I'm a little more of this and I should be a little less of that. So because of that, I'm going to, and none of that. You know what I'm saying? I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm so glad that you brought up movies and the physical art mediums. In a sense, your art is physical in a sense where people can like see it and read it, things like that. But movies are powerful because, it creates the landscape. This is why for me, artist to artist, this is why instrumental music, the music that I'm putting out right now, the Sonic Storytelling series, I put out 2 EPs of that. And then I have a series called How I Speak, His for short, which, will be explained as I put out more music. But it's all instrumental for the simple fact that other than the title and the artwork, which obviously has meaning to me, the rest is for you to kind of find yourself into and just say, you know what I'm saying? And I feel that's missing. It's missing, and I want to put more of that out, and you're putting more of that out already. I feel like, you know, in terms of just output, you have a lot more out, because I see like you're just always, you're putting your self-expression out there, and, you know, observation at your pace. If you don't feel like putting something for a few days, like you come right back and come back in 5 days and you don't feel bad about it. Why? Because you owe nothing to anybody. You owe it to yourself to be an artist, and that's it.
I see the same with you too. So it's like you have control, because a lot of people, and especially when you're driven by money, everything changes, because then money it has a leash on your artistic ability. Like, you want to do something for monetary gain, but when you do it for literal expression, to unwind, to connect human beings, there's a difference.
Yeah.
So I feel that.
Yeah, it's the thing about money for me is, I think people always want to talk about how money changes people, but I think money exposes people, and it's important.
I like that. I believe that.
I think Gary Vee said this actually. Money exposes people, and it's important to understand that when you get exposed, as it did for me over these past 2 years, because money definitely exposed me over the past 2 years. It's important to understand in that moment, this is happening. How are you going to react to it? And I've reacted in such a way where, as I said, I used to travel a lot. Now I don't. I don't need to go into detail. I think everybody can kind of figure out why that is the way it is. But now I think about money way differently than I did 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, even honestly, even a month ago. And that's because there's stimuli that exposes us. And it is our responsibility as people, and, you know, listening to other people's opinions about it as well, because sometimes people can give you insight, but it is our responsibility as individuals to understand if money as an object or as a leash, as you said, if it's going to do something to you that is going to bring more harm than good, understand the motivations for that and act on it. You know what I mean?
Never compromise your art for the love of money. You know, like, never compromise your art for image either. Like a lot of times we change because we might get something out of it. But so no compromising your art, yo.
Image. When people see you and they see your aesthetic, for me, having known you for as long as I have, it's always been very consistent. And I think that's very important, because even as you've grown as an individual, and I've seen that over the years, and like, as your friend, I'm very happy to see that. You've been able to maintain a consistent image. I think my issue was about the same time that I've known you, I've had different motivations from time, and there were times where I had tapped into some things artistically that I could have doubled down on and been way better off, but I didn't have that self-awareness. You know what I mean? So, I think as far as image goes, consistency is also important, but again, going back to the motivations and stuff like that, what lies under your image are your motivations. If your motivations are the amount of worth that you place into how many followers you have on Instagram, as opposed to how many lives that you change, you know what I mean? So when we first started the conversation, you were talking about how it was so important to you to cultivate a group of people. And I have been doing this as well, sometimes unintentionally. And I think that's the beauty of art, because sometimes, like, you'll wake up and you'll look at something that you worked on before, and you'll see it totally different. The first music project that I put out, it's very different to me now as opposed to how I looked at it when I was making it, and it was a mixtape. And I did it all by myself. I was very happy with the fact that I can say to myself, like, I did that myself. But at the same time, it was a shell of who I actually was. And so I look at that now and I'm like, this AJ is important, but I think is, yeah, turn that down. I think it's important to wait on that and just have that self-awareness. It's just been very interesting because like we've been walking the same like artistic path for like about the same, like, I mean, obviously like before that, but I feel like when I met you and like you met me, like we were kind of going at it pretty steady by that point. It's just been really interesting.
And I've been following what you've been putting out for real though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been watching too. You know me, like I like having my commentary and things like that. But as I said a couple minutes ago, it's just everything looks so different now when you take the time to understand. And that's honestly just the point of this podcast, this platform, taking the time to hear people's stories, having discussions about the things that matter, being able to understand things better, and finding a new person of interest to check out. So, Mr. Nomancer Lidney, thank you so much. I'm like, honestly, this sounds very, very cheesy, but my heart is very full having this conversation because I feel like I understand a lot more about what's going on. And I'll end with this. You talk a lot about your interactions with the divine feminine, as you said, or like feminine energy and things like that. And recently I stumbled across a bunch of stuff that is in that same ballpark, and I'll share it with you over text. And having this conversation with you makes sense now. It makes sense to me because I took the time to check that out, and I see things differently now. It's different. It's weird. I like it though. It's very fascinating. I feel like before I go to sleep, I'm going to go through your Instagram for about like 15, 20 minutes and just like flip through and just start piecing things together that I hadn't before. Like I'm looking into the Matrix.
It's just this, like we like to say things like divine and God and goddess, but like who really is your God? Who do you worship? And is the thing that you worship, is it tarnishing your soul? Is the thing that you worship, is it uplifting you? Or is it killing you slowly? You know what I'm saying? And the reason I say that is because a lot of the things we worship are temporary, you know. No matter how much you love romance or music, you like beats, no matter how much you like photography, no matter how much you like drugs, you like sex, you like church, we can place the label God on a lot of these things, but at the end of the day, it won't lead us nowhere. It won't lead us to heaven. No matter how much you label peanut butter jelly sandwich God, it ain't gonna lead you to heaven. And that was corny, but what I'm trying to say is like, who do you worship? And make sure that if you worship this thing, there's a reason that you're placing your devotion to it. So when it comes to like you mentioned, divine feminine, it's like a lot of these men, like we out here worshiping, you know, the woman body, the essence, the beauty, but then we're mistreating.
Right.
We're mistreating them.
Because we have a misunderstanding.
And the only way to understand really is to worship the one true God. And that's what I want to say at the end, like for real. Like, I mean, who do you worship and is it worth it? Just
think about that.
It's been a pleasure, brother. It's been really good, bro.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Vices and Vultures and considering being a supporter of this project.
Even leaving a review on your preferred podcast platform goes a long way for us.
There is more information about this episode, as well as who we are, in the show notes.
This includes all our social media links, so you can see us and not just hear us.
Vices and Vultures is brought to you by Aesthetic and is based in the great state of New York.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast for more episodes.
And tune in next time to Vices and Vultures.